Hello, everybody. This is Sarah, and welcome back to PMO Refuge. I'm so happy that you're listening to this latest episode, and it's going to be the last part of kind of the introductory part of this course, where we kind of define what PMO exactly is. And this one isn't in the abbreviation of PMO, but it's a part of masturbation, which we're going to get to in a second. But I've been so happy, getting some feedback. I know that, just looking at the YouTube algorithm, that this is going to be a slow growth, and it's something that people are ashamed of. They don't like to research into this part of their lives, but, I'm just here to, any little view that I get, I'm happy to really, share and partake in that growth. So without further ado, this episode is on edging. Now, if you are familiar with PMO, or if you are familiar or involved in the NoFap community, you know what edging is. But if you don't, that's okay. That's going to be the first part of today's discussion, is what is edging exactly. We're going to talk about why I personally define edging as straight up masturbation. And then we're going to talk about how edging is still hazardous and dangerous to you, especially if you're trying to break free from this addiction. So without further ado, let's get into it. Part one, what is edging exactly? It kind of is exactly what it sounds like, but what happens is a person who edges is somebody who stimulates themselves. They touch and stimulate their sexual organs, but this is done in a purposeful way. And many times they edge close and close and close as they can get to an orgasm. But the whole point of it is they don't actually orgasm. Now, again, somebody may ask, well, why would a person do this? What's the reasoning behind it? And the edging is really involved, and it comes into play a lot of times with people who are trying to quit excessive masturbation, because it's almost like their way of kind of trying to stop without completely going cold turkey. Now, let me pause for a second and share with you all, edging, even to this day, has been the hardest thing for me to stop, because I was one of those people that used edging to completely stop, but I'm not going to openly endorse it. I will say at least I understand why people decide to go that route. But that's what happened to me. I was so ingrained, because PMO had been in my life for 20 years. So it was so ingrained to me that I realistically told myself I was going to go from not masturbating at all to I was going to, well, first I was doing it, 3 times a day. Then it was, okay, I'm going to cut down on the number of times, then I'm going to stop. Then I'm going to start edging, 3 or 4 times. Then I'm going to cut down on edging until I'm completely free from PMO. That was the route that I took, and it did work, but what's interesting is when I explained that strategy to my coach who helped me through PMO, Roman Mironov, he said, okay, I understand where you're going with this, but it is a lot better if you just still reach orgasm. But the point is you start setting goals for yourself. Like, let's say, okay, a month span, right? The month of July. Let's take this month. So a better way to go about stopping masturbation, and we're going to talk about this, as we kind of continue along in our course, but a better way is to actually reach orgasm. And the way to do it is, let's say you set a goal to just do it once a week during the month of July, all the way to orgasm. Then you self-pleasure in August 3 times a month, all the way to orgasm. And you see where this is going. Then the next month you go 2, then 1. and then you just completely stop. That is much better. It's healthier because your body is reaching that climax. So that kind of leads me perfectly into, well, why is it so hazardous? Why is it so dangerous for people who are trying to stop PMO? And that is the reason is your dopamine levels. Because really, to think of it, what happens to your body when you do masturbate all the way to climax? Well, you start touching and feeling your sexual organs, whether it is an intimacy or if it is by yourself. In so doing, that starts kicking your brain, that you're essentially telling your brain, okay, it's time for sexual relations. So your brain starts, kicking out all these chemicals in your body, right? Dopamine and so on and so forth. And that makes you feel really good. That's why the act of sex is enjoyable. And then the whole point of it is eventually you reach that climax with somebody. And in so doing, that's how you cultivate that love and intimacy. Now, if you're by yourself, you reach that by yourself. So if you edge, you are following the same exact course, right? You are, touching yourself, and then you are starting your brain with that dopamine rush. But the difference is you just stop it 2/3 of the way through. You don't reach that climax. Now, the problem with edging, and that leads me into what are the short-term effects of edging. The problem is if you continue to follow this process, well, number one, you can still end up edging for a long period of time. Because rather than chasing, pornography images, mental fantasies, and so forth, well, really, you could still be doing those things, but you're edging rather than just, self-pleasuring all the way to completion. So if anything, you're still not really getting rid of any problems, And that kind of leads me to the biggest point of this whole discussion. And the biggest breakthrough that I had is realizing that edging is relapsing. It is. You just have to be honest with yourself and tell yourself edging is relapsing. Because to give you an example, imagine, and you've seen this a lot in the healthcare community, somebody who wants to stop smoking, in recent times, it became very popular to start vaping. And a lot of people who do that will tell you, well, it's not the same and it's healthier for you, or at least it's not a cigarette, I'm doing this instead, right? But the problem is they are still following the same course of action to a desired result. They're just doing it a little differently. Edging is the same exact thing as masturbating. You are just doing it a little bit more differently, or you are not doing it all the way to completion. So you start telling yourself it's not the same thing. And that leads me to what are the long-term effects of edging. So let's say if you don't get rid of edging, I almost guarantee you, if you do not get rid of edging, you will relapse. It will just be a matter of time. If anything, just imagine it like a boiling pot, it's just going to simmer and simmer and boil until eventually your body is not going to be able to stop that amount of pressure. It'll say, okay, I need to release my bodily fluids. I'm sorry to get a little graphic, but I have to. Your body won't have any choice. And yes, maybe it might do so with a wet dream. That is true. But a lot of times, if you are openly, developing your body to do that, whether it is edging or if it is full self-pleasure, eventually, it's one of those things where when the room is so dry, you start choking on, your own throat, essentially. Oh my goodness, my throat got a dry patch there. Whew. Okay. So, I apologize, everyone. I had to edit out some of that. I had one of those dry spots in my throat suddenly flare up. Started coughing like crazy right in the middle of my discussion. So, sorry if it kind of seems a little choppy there in the middle. But we were talking about the long-term effects of edging. So, like we said, you are following it all the way through. More than likely, I would say more than 90% of people who edge will end up fully relapsing, even if they do not intend to do so, because you are working your body in an unnatural way. And in so doing, especially if you are edging still with pornography in some form or fashion, you are not changing anything, essentially. So it is so important that you just need to get to that realization of masturbation equals edging. Because then if you tell yourself that, then you will work very hard to not edge, and then you'll start cutting down, on time spent on PMO. You'll start cutting down definitely on the pornography. You'll start using your time more effectively. Maybe you'll start keeping yourself busy because you'll realize, well, hey, I can't even edge either, so I need to stop doing this. So what did we learn today? Well, we learned that edging is a type of masturbation where a person purposefully self-pleasures, but the whole point of it is they self-pleasure almost to the point of complete orgasm, but they purposely stop themselves. The reason why they do this is because more than likely this is a person who already is self-aware that they need to stop their PMO problem. So in so doing, and I know this was the case for me, they purposefully find a substitute for just openly, masturbating. And this is their method of doing so. But the sooner you realize and start telling yourself, edging is masturbating, that will help you so much to stop edging. In so doing, you will stop that dopamine cycle. Your body levels will go back to normal. Your brain levels will go back to normal. And then you'll even find it easier and easier to avoid edging. I'd like to thank everybody for listening to this week's episode. And this concludes kind of the first section of our course, where all of it was simply just about definitions. We defined, well, what is pornography? What is masturbation? Why are these things so bad? What is edging? Because it's so important. Again, you could do a simple Google search and find all of these things. But it's so important to still talk about and discuss these points because it's your foundation. And once you build knowledge of your addiction, that's really the first step in starting to fight it, is you start learning about it. So now you want to do your part in changing, and when you start understanding your addiction, you find better methods to start changing. Next week, before we kind of start the second section of our discourse, I'm going to be it's going to be a little different. It's going to be a long video, and we are simply just going to talk about why it's important that you do realize that you are worth it, And it's really just going to be a half hour of encouragement to those people who feel helpless against their addiction. And I really hope you all tune in and enjoy that. But this has been Sarah, and I hope to see you next week. Bye.